imean.com. Joining me as always, the genius, the oracle of odds, the Choven one, Joshua Choven. Joshua, how are you, sir? Obviously celebrating the Iowa Hawkeye basketball victory. Did you win some money off of that, by the way?
I did have a fun bet down. I don't the Iowa Hawkeyes are really the only team that I am a fan of. My soul has been killed as far as professional sports. I was born in Pittsburgh, so grew up a fan of them and quickly learned to bet against them, and the Iowa Hawkeyes are really the only team I've stayed loyal to. I have bet against them. It feels dirty, but yeah, yeah, maybe like $100 bet last night, but it was more so. And I guess we can get this out of the way now. We are an MMA podcast. I think that maybe we occasionally talk about boxing or wrestling. So this isn't really me and Pat's thing, but we are both from Iowa, both Hawkeye fans. A lot of our fan base is Hawkeye fans, and I think that the Iowa Hawkeyes and MFS wrestling go together like peanut butter and jelly. And so just shout out to this basketball team. It's literally making me tear up. But we have never made an Elite Eight since I've been alive. No one saw this coming. We barely got in the NCAA tournament, and it just shows this amazing coach that we have. Thank you, Ben McCollum. His first year, he makes the Elite Eight. And now he's doing so good that we're worried he's going to leave us. He's been such a good coach. We're worried he's going to leave. But thank you, Iowa Hawkeyes. You have made the state of Iowa so happy. I was up late talking to my little brother on the phone.
Now, are the Cyclones still in it?
Yeah, I guess we got to give a shout out to the Cyclones too. We had two. They play today, so they made it to the Sweet 16. If they play today, they will make the Elite Eight also.
Now, this is what I want to know. Look, I paid attention to the Iowa. You know, I'm not a basketball guy. I appreciate the sport. I do enjoy the sport. I used to love playing the sport actually a lot, just extra stuff to stay in shape. But the thing is now Iowa and Iowa State are on opposite sides of the bracket, correct? So can they potentially meet in the final for the national championship? And I'm just thinking the Iowa State fans all packed into one building for a national championship. Do you know how insane that would be if that's the case?
They would run out of Busch Light. There would not be enough Busch Light in that stadium for Iowa. So yeah,
but I think that's the case, isn't it?
That's a very good question. Well, as I'm looking it up, let me blow your mind here for a second. Do you know who Iowa plays in their next game and winner gets in the Final Four?
Who would that be?
The University of Illinois, which is even better for
my friend Jack.
People.
Jack. Here's the thing. My friend Jack, who's a huge Illini fan, of course, Quad Cities is Iowa, Illinois communities right on the Mississippi River. He said, their opponent had to have 4 players on the floor for them to win. Which
that was mostly a coaching error by the yes, Pat. There is a world where Iowa and Iowa State can meet in the finals, so they are on.
Which I'm rooting for both of them to get there because that's an epic deal if that happened. Now, I watched Arizona last night and Arkansas, and they're pretty tough, bro. They're pretty tough.
That was a very up and down game in general. Yeah, I watched a little bit of that too, but. Yeah, I guess you could call this game coming up tomorrow, Iowa, Illinois. It's the college basketball tug fest, right? For you Quad Cities people.
Sure. Yeah. So good luck to the Hawkeyes against the Illini and Iowa State Cyclones, of course, in their game today. Let's talk now last week. How did we do last week overall? How did you do in the bill paying slot?
Yeah, pretty damn good. Lee, our producer, shout out to him. He always tells me how his bets did, and his bets pretty much directly reflect my bets. And so fight goes decision, and the main event was a big one. Thought that was a weird, goofy decision that I didn't agree with, but it did go to decision. Christian Leroy Duncan was great. The two higher priced guys, the minus 900 guys, they both won, but they didn't finish, and I had touted that. So hand up, I do occasionally get something wrong, but they did still win. They just didn't win by finish. But yeah, it was was another good card there in London.
All right, beautiful. All right, move on to MMA news a little bit. A lot of ruckus being made about fighter pay, which that's come and gone over the years, to be honest with you. But I think Eddie Hearn's interview, where he said, "Well, he's going to bite his lip a little bit," and then said, that the contract that his heavyweight has, that he manages in the UFC, is a effing disgrace. He literally, while biting his tongue, of course.
That's classic Eddie Hearn. Yeah.
And then you've got Rogan talking about fighter pay, and Rogan's not going to go against the UFC. In my humble opinion, Rogan's not going to go against the UFC and talk like this unless he's been prompted somehow to maybe bring it up. And this is something that I've always believed, because the unions, United Auto Workers and a couple other ones, years ago, I was in meetings with some of those folks years ago about potential unionizing the fighters. And in my humble opinion, if these sort of things take place, then only the biggest shows in the world will be able to afford the talent. And we've already seen the UFC go all the way down to people with 4 and 5 fights on their record.
If that.
Well, then we're dealing with some serious problems, right? If only a couple of organizations can afford athletes. So that's something to think about. What are your thoughts on fighter pay being almost that of what it was when I was fighting?
Yeah, it's not good, and I think that the UFC would kind of argue, yeah, we know that the lowest paid player in Major League Baseball makes $500,000, and the lowest paid fighter in the UFC makes $10,000, but a baseball player plays 160 games a year. A UFC fighter fights once, twice, maybe 3 times a year. Well, I mean, that's kind of a lousy argument for multiple reasons, and one of them is, we'll just look at how much money the UFC is making, and I'm starting to get a little bit fired up about this, because I'm a math guy, obviously, and not so much of a economics guy, but I do have a basic understanding of it, Pat Notech. When you look at how much money the UFC makes, it's a fucking ton of money. Companies that are struggling financially don't sign $7 billion deals just for the TV rights. They didn't sell the UFC for $7 billion. They sold their TV rights for $7 billion. You should not be paying a single fighter on the roster less than $50,000 to fight, $70,000 to fight, and I'm talking the lower guys, the Austin Hubbards, the Eric Sheldons, the guys that are just trying to get there. What are we doing? This is stupid. Dana White has 20 mansions, 3 yachts. I wasn't planning on getting this fired up. This wasn't planned. This isn't fake. This is stupid, and I'm just a fan. How does the UFC Hall of Famer feel, not only as a fighter, but you had a whole stable of fighters that were counting on you to help make them fights, help them survive. This is fucking ridiculous. I usually limit myself to one F-bomb on a show. The UFC is taking advantage of its fighters. It's robbing them blind, and I'm not scared of Dana White. This is stupid. This is wrong. This is definitely morally wrong and probably legally wrong. What do you think, Pat? Fuck.
Well, yeah. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your emotional response. For me, that's something that, I crossed that Rubicon a long time ago, dealt with that, battled, those fights, dealt with those issues and a myriad of others within that world, that ecosystem, so to speak. So, it's not my fight anymore. I did my best. And, ultimately I was kind of on an island when it came to standing up. And so, I got chewed up and spit out in a few ways. I don't have a grudge. I don't have hard feelings. It is what it is. People are going to protect their interests, protect their money. That's just the way it is. So if the fighters want to do something about it, they're going to have to figure something out and stand up for themselves. And, to be honest with you, there is room for organizations that can hand out stock options to athletes for sticking around longer, for when you win a title, you get more stock options, and as many times as you defend it. Those sort of things where you get athletes that don't jump ship and go on to other. So there's a big part of that. And just on the grocery store chain level, Uh, I'll just give you an example. Jewel food stores were all over the Midwest when I was a kid, and they literally went under and went out of business because Hy-Vee gave stock options to its employees. Jewel was a union run food chain, and it went belly up because of the stock options and things like that. So if anybody had a thinking cap on, that's what they do with MMA. Start an organization that had stock options for athletes, make them percentage owners of, and take pride in what they're doing, and that would be the way to go. So it is what it is. But I just find it. Joe Rogan, Eddie Hearn, a lot of big names are talking about this. Almost seems kind of, I don't know, maybe planned. I don't know. It is what it is. I'm not going to let the conspiracy stuff control me. Then we move on to Hunter Campbell. A lot of people are saying the guy's a bear to deal with, on the money thing and some other stuff. And there's even people saying that Hunter Campbell is ruining the UFC. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So Hunter Campbell, I think we have a pretty knowledgeable MMA fan base, so I won't talk to you like you're all 2 years old. So Hunter Campbell came along for a while. The UFC for a long time. The UFC was the Fertitta brothers, and then Dana, and then as the Fertitta brothers stepped away, they brought in Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard, or at least bumped their responsibilities up. And Sean and Mick handle. They have their own weight divisions of fighters, and they will handle a lot of the contracts. You have to be a pretty big deal, like before you start talking to Dana White personally and negotiating with him. And then as the UFC grew, their leadership grew, and they brought in Hunter Campbell. Hunter started out as the UFC's de facto lawyer. That's when you've made it in business, when you have your own lawyer on speed dial 24/7, and he basically works for you, and that's about it. And he was a Vegas lawyer before that. His dad was a big time celebrity lawyer, and they plucked Hunter up when he was in his late 30s, probably about my age, and he's just grown in responsibility to the point where it's no secret Hunter is the chosen one. He is handpicked by Dana White to be the next Dana White. And we're seeing that as Dana is doing Zuffa Boxing, and that's his new pet project. That's his UFC. Dana still does stuff, but Hunter takes on more and more responsibilities, and eventually he will be the president of the UFC. Now, what do you think about that, Pat? Do you agree with all that? Because I think at this point, it's not even rumor anymore. That's obviously what's happening, and they're not even really trying to hide it.
Well, I don't, as something gets so large, that you've got to bring on other people and deal with some of the what quote unquote dirty work and all of that. So it is what it is. The fact that the UFC just signed the big deal with Paramount for $7+ billion, is a big deal, and they openly talked and said, oh, this is going to be great for fighters. It's going to be great for this. And obviously that's not necessarily the case as of yet. And then they move on to, as well, moving away from, specifically talking about Hunter Campbell or Dana or anybody, that the UFC is no longer covering the travel expenses and room and board of the camp, minus the head coach of the athlete, which when the UFC was struggling, back in the day when it was during the dark ages, so to speak, of MMA, NHB, they paid for everybody to have a hotel, to have a bed, to
Even
have
in
an
the dark
airline
ages,
flight.
they did.
That you had three for title fights, you had four cornermen. For non-title fights, you had three.
Okay.
And so, you now imagine this. From my camp, there were UFCs where I had 8 people on one card from my camp.
I've seen those cards, yeah.
And each one of those guys would bring 3 guys. So my entire camp would jump on a plane and commandeer it and fly out to wherever the fight was. And, that's the way that was. That would not be the case anymore, of course, under these new rules and guidelines. And, times are tough after you sign a $7+ billion deal with Paramount Pro.
I guess,
Right?
man, and yeah, our producers tell me to get fired up again. I might, yeah, because I mean I didn't even know that, and that's one of the many wonderful things about doing this show with such a UFC legend is they have insight into that. I would just say this, and Pat and I have talked about this. when you look at really every other major sports organization in this country, Major League Baseball, the National Football League, the National Hockey League, the National Basketball Association, who are they all run by? Well, they all have owners of the teams who are all billionaires, but to be the president and the guy who's the boss, now he answers to these billionaire owners, but his job is keeping all 30 billionaires happy. And so Commissioner Roger Goodell in the NFL, former super lawyer. Gary Bettman in the NHL, former super lawyer. Adam Silver running the NBA, David Stern before him, both super lawyers. So what have they been trained to do basically since they could walk is be soulless, be the toughest SOB negotiator alive, and really the only thing that matters is money and keeping the owners happy. In this case, the owners are the investors, and Hunter Campbell is a yes man. He answers to them, and his job is not to work for the fighters. His job is to get the fighters on board for as cheap as possible, whether that's convincing a no-name fighter from Bettendorf, Iowa to fight for 10,000 and 10,000, which is insane, or 15 and 15 or whatever it is, or that's seeing if Conor McGregor will accept only 3 million for this, for try to get him a fight. But his job is to squeeze as much product out of it for as little money as possible, and that's what made Dana White special. Love him or hate him, Dana White wasn't a suit. He was a regular guy from Boston. So now we have this super lawyer, and all these super lawyers do have a look about him, maybe kind of look like me a bit. And they're all just trained to be assassins. And that's what the UFC is now. It's just the same as any other major sports league. And I guess there's pros and cons to that, but yeah, good luck.
So are we potentially, that's the thing for me is, are we potentially moving into a situation where, a guy like Dan Lambert, who owns American Top Team, has done very well for himself in life. He has, honed that system down and runs it, very efficiently. Great guy. He helped me in the past immensely when I was having tough times trying to keep up with my camp and just float the boat. Dan's a great guy. Are we looking at potentially, these teams? And I envisioned for myself before I retired from coaching is that there's got to be a way for me as a coach, if I'm producing this many world champions, to partner with some corporations to call it, the Chevron MFS fight team, right? Or whatever. But I can't advertise in the UFC now. I can't put Chevron on my fighters' shorts. If I had athletes in there, they don't allow it. So there has to be something done there. We'll see how it plays out, but that's always an opportunity for the people that run gyms, right? Who are doing it well anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, you want to move on to the card, this coming card?
Did we have one more news topic, or are we ready to go card?
No, go ahead. If it's itching.
Let's obviously we're aware of time. We want to keep it around an hour. Let's cover the MVP card, and then we'll jump into the fights.
Yeah, go tear it up, bro.
You want me to? How about you briefly tell the fans what this MVP card is, and I will pull up the full fight breakdown.
MVP on Netflix. The Jake Paul's team has put together the Ronda Rousey Gina Carano fight. They've put together Ngannou on the card. They put together now Diaz is on the card, correct?
Mike Perry, Nate Diaz, which is a fight Nate Diaz dream.
I think Mike Perry's too big for Nate Diaz. I don't necessarily agree with that matchup, but Nate Diaz is very good at playing rope-a-dope to a certain extent, and Mike Perry is also a guy that's good at potentially running himself out of gas trying to maim people. So we'll see how that plays out.
Exactly.
But
well
yeah,
said.
go ahead and extenuate on it.
As I look up and down this card, this is a fun card. I think it reminds me of the old Bellator cards. We're gonna get some fighters who maybe couldn't cut it in the UFC anymore. They're getting a little long in the tooth, but they can still fight. And I think we saw that with Pat Miletich when he fought a few years ago and almost knocked down a guy half his age. These guys can still thump, and we can still put them in there, especially if we're having them fight other kind of middle-aged fighters who are in the same boat. And they have no problem being the senior tour of MMA, and then we mix in some younger guys, some up and comers. So I'm going to run down this card because I would give it a solid A minus, especially for a promotion's first card ever.
All
So
right,
it started
start
out.
from the bottom up.
All right, I am loaded on my phone right now. I may skip over the first couple fights anyway. So bottom up, we have Eileen Pereira. That's Alex Pereira's brother. She fights a lot like him. She's only 2-2. I think that's a perfectly fine fight to start the card. And then a couple guys from the regional scene like KSW. Now, KSW is legit. It is in Poland, so a lot of Polish fighters came from that. I won't bore you with that, though, because 99% of fans aren't going to recognize them. You'll recognize this one, boys. Muhammad Mokayev, 15-0. Russian originally, but lives in London. He's a guy who 100% would have been on last week's UFC London card. Now, Pat, how does a 15-0 guy get cut from the UFC? It's certainly not for losing. He was just a pain in the ass to work with, and the UFC is now big enough that they said, yeah, we're not going to deal with it anymore. So MVP scoops him up. He's fighting Adriano Moraes, who is the only man to knock out, or I believe even finish, Demetrius Johnson. That happened when he went over to ONE FC. So I think that low-key may be the best fight on the card. Junior Dos Santos against knockout expert Robelis Despaigne. Now, the whole thing with Robelis Despaigne, Pat, is he can thump, but the boy can't wrestle. He's never freaking wrestled in his life. So will Junior Dos Santos, who can wrestle, is not known as a wrestler, as his strength. Will
But he can out-wrestle him.
Exactly. So will he take the easy way out, or will he stand and bang with him? And then I'll just jump to Nate Diaz, Mike Perry. We talked about that. Ngannou's back. The Predator's back. He's fighting Felipe Lins, Rousey Carano. Great card. I can't wait to bet it.
Beautiful. Well, if it's a once every quarter card that they can put together great cards, great. Which I would, probably it would be wise to start that way. But Jake Paul's got a pretty powerful team assembled over there, some heavy hitters in his camp. So, I think they can probably continue to do that if they so choose. So, all right, moving on to this week's card. Seattle's Climate Pledge Arena, by the way. Now, they build a massive building, burn massive amounts of energy, but you will be forced to drink with paper straws. So just keep that in mind.
Those Climate Pledge people can't be happy with our wonderful producer using AI. I mean, Lee must have burned up a whole lake of water earlier.
Don't throw him under the bus. You do the same thing. So, but they do have plastic alert systems in the arena, I hear. Alex, let's start with the card before we get ourselves in too much trouble.
More than we already have.
For anybody that thinks I'm making fun of climate change, go to soilsaviors.org and we'll show you different. Anyway, Alexia Tianara against Bruna Brazil. Money's leaning heavily towards Tianara. It looks like 13-1. She's got no knockouts either way, win or loss. Very good submission artist. And the money's leaning towards her. The competitive nature of, both have had fairly decent, solid opponents leading up to this, but and certainly Brazil has more experience in the UFC. But tell me what you're seeing.
We're gonna like this, Pat. I'm more interested, at least, in talking about her opponent, Bruno Brazil. So, are you familiar with the Fighting Nerds, Pat? They are kind of the hot new fight camp. So that would be Mauricio Hufi.
Was Modafferi part of that?
No, she did. That's a good question. She did the whole nerd thing, but the Fighting Nerds are out of Brazil, and it's Mauricio Hufi, Gene Silva, Caio Borralho, and then the guy who smokes cigarettes after he wins. Oh,
and they all wear glasses like this. Is that?
Yeah, they all wear the Carlos Prates. So those are the four. There used to be five. Pat Militech. Bruno Brazil was kind of the girl fighter, and they were all undefeated. And then Bruno Brazil lost. And then she lost again. And they started saying, okay, maybe you don't be in the pictures. Maybe you don't. maybe we just go back to us four because they don't like losers in that, and they have all lost since then. So maybe that was justice. But Bruno Brazil was definitely overhyped, and she came in and she's lost, I think, more than she's won in the UFC. So we got Tainara, who opened up at minus 450 on Caesars and has been steamed out to minus 800, which is almost her line is almost doubled. So yeah, she should roll here. I've talked about my love for line movement, maybe not so much when it comes to female fighters. It's been coming through, but this is going to happen eventually that we see a female fighter, her line movement go crazy, and we're all wondering why, because she doesn't really show up and fight for your money. So Tainara is the pick, 1,000,000% here, maybe 2.5 stars out of 5, and that's the bet.
All right. That's a pretty easy pick, to be honest with you. And, the fact that Tainara and Brazil, one's ranked 21st in the world, the other one's ranked 23rd, that's kind of surprising that they're ranked that closely together, given when you look at the odds and everything else related to this. Or are there only 25 female fighters in this weight division? What's the deal?
Yeah, and those are not the UFC rankings; those are Tapology's rankings.
Sure.
But those are still fairly accurate. They
Yeah.
have their own experts that do it, and their rankings also go much deeper. The UFC will only do 15. They will go into the hundreds. So that might explain that.
All right. Let's go to Ricky Simone and Adrian Yanez. I called both of these guys fights. I like them both a lot. Both guys very tough, very tough. And I think the numbers are kind of showing that. Both guys are 2-3 in their last 5 fights. They've had comparable opponents, numbers wise, record wise, on their way up. So they were brought along the right way. Both guys very skilled, very tough. And really, ultimately, kind of the same winning ratio in the UFC, although Ricky Simone has, twice as many fights in the UFC as Yanez. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, great breakdown, by the way. I think we're looking at the battle of who's fallen off harder. I think have Ricky Simone and Adrian Yanez. The better days seem to be behind them. They both have not looked like themselves lately. I think the odds favor Simone slightly here because, like you said, Simone's been around longer. They both have not looked great over their last few fights. I would argue that Yanez has looked worse. Yanez has looked like an alien took over his body or he's being run by AI or something. Yanez looks nothing like, man, he used to be so flashy and quick, and he was kind of like a Carlos Prates with that speed and power, maybe even a future champion. He doesn't even look like himself. Simone just looks like maybe he's getting a little bit old. I think that neither guy's looked great lately, but Simone has looked better. Give me Ricky Simone, probably a 1 star bet. He's minus 175 on FanDuel.
I'm leaning with you on that one as well. Moving on to Sterling versus Lopez. You know, Lopez, well, I did quite well in the UFC if I remember, or in LFA if I remember correctly, and what 1-1 in the UFC, is that correct?
I
Trying
believe
to
so.
and and at the same time, Sterling's 3-0 in the UFC. He's had a great start. Really doing well, undefeated, and the numbers kind of obviously are showing that. And I don't know where the numbers are currently, but I know the last time I looked, certainly numbers were leaning towards Sterling. Give me your honest breakdown on this.
So now Sterling's a dog. He's a top flight prospect, and that's for good reason. He's out of that Australian camp with Australia, New Zealand, with most of those guys. I think he's one of Volkanovski's prized pupils, and yeah, you're right. He showed up and looked the part. It's one thing to be a hot prospect when you're fighting taxi drivers and stuff. No offense to taxi drivers, but when you're fighting these guys on the underground cards, it's a little easier to floor them. Put you in the UFC, he's passed the test. So this is test number 4. Bruno Lopez is a step up in competition, I think, from the guys that he's fought, but the odds don't care. Minus 450, he opened up on Caesars. He's moved to minus 650. This is probably a 4.5 star, 5 star bet. Give me Sterling all day. Lock it into your parlays, and you can sleep pretty confidently knowing this will come through.
Yes, very good, very good. So between that parlay and leaning towards Tainara. That would be part of your parlay, those two fights then.
Yeah, yeah, I'm fine doing that. Like I said, I tread a little carefully with female fights, no matter what the line movement. But if you want a line movement parlay, buddy, that's the one. Both those fighters have had incredible line movement, and all the math signals are pointing heavily in their favor.
All right, I agree. And so moving on to Gabriela Fernandez against Casey O'Neill. O'Neill's done well in the UFC. Fernandez not bad, 3-2 in the UFC. You know, respectable, 11-3 overall. Both girls have never been knocked out. Only one finish in the submission area of O'Neill being finished with a submission once. The competition for Fernandez has not been as stiff on the way up, and that's the one thing that has me leaning a little bit towards O'Neill because of the solid competition that she's had to deal with and the numbers she's turned out, you know, even while dealing with tougher competition, I guess.
Yeah, so Casey O'Neill in particular was a fascinating story. She was a Australian American Scottish woman, and she literally she grew up around fighters, her dad, and so they had the connections and money to kind of travel everywhere. And the O'Neill is a Scottish name, but they would kind of go from camp to camp. She was a bit of a Renaissance woman. And this fight's fascinating to me, Pat, because I don't think I've ever seen reverse line movement like this. On half the sports books that I track, O'Neill started out as the favorite and has
Right.
slipped to a slight underdog. On the other half of the sports books, Fernandez opened as a slight underdog and has slipped to a favorite. So that kind of blows my mind. Like, I don't know what to do here. I think I like fight goes to decision would be my favorite bet. That's minus 200 on Caesars and roughly the same on FanDuel. I don't know. I'm just good. I mean, give me Casey O'Neill, I guess, but that's with a half star of confidence. I do really like fight goes to decision though. That would be a much more confident bet.
Okay, I'm leaning towards O'Neill as well. Should be a good, you know, a good matchup for the two. All right, moving on to Tiberia against Fortune. I don't know. The way I look at this on the numbers, to a certain extent, it's almost because you got a guy Fortune who's 13-2 in Bellator. Did quite well in Bellator. You got Tiberia, who's fought a pretty tough, stiff level of competition. I don't know. I lean towards Tiberia, even though it looks like the odds when I looked had Fortune, you know, as the favorite. You tell me.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting, Pat. I don't know if it's something to celebrate, although I think it's justified. The downfall of PFL continues. So PFL bought Bellator, and all they've really done since then, Pat, is lose all their good fighters. They're obviously having some financial issues, maybe throwing $1 billion at Francis Ngannou to get literally one fight out of him was a bad financial decision. I don't know. We're not accountants, but Jesus Christ. I mean, they literally did pay him a ridiculous amount of money. They paid Jake Paul a ridiculous amount of money to do freaking nothing. He never fought. So they're having financial problems. So they lose another good, solid fighter in Tyrone Fortune. And the MVP card, one of the fights I kind of glossed over, you have Lorenz Larkin, who I'm sure you're aware of, Pat, versus Jason Jackson. So those are two other Bellator PFL veterans that have slipped off to other promotions. So Tyrell Fortune, he is primarily a wrestler. I've bet on him and against him several times back in the old Bellator days that I look upon fondly. And I don't know what's going on with Marcin Tybura here. He was Anta Deligia's first UFC fight and got knocked out in about 2 minutes. I'm not sure why they're using Tybura as the heavyweight gatekeeper for these old Bellator guys, but they seem to be. Will he fare better this time? Like I said, Tyrone Fortune is more of a wrestler. He's kind of well-rounded like Tybura is. And there's been a little line movement in Fortune's direction. He opened up at minus 127 on Bet Rivers. He's minus 143 now.
Yeah.
So that is moving kind of in the right direction. But you know what, Pat? I didn't like Terrell Fortune when he was in Bellator. He drove me crazy there. Nothing against him personally, but I didn't like betting on him in Bellator. I liked betting against him. I'm going to keep that going here. Ty Burra is the UFC tested guy. I
Hmm.
think he gets some revenge for the last Bellator guy plastering him into lack of consciousness. I think he gets a little revenge here. Forget the minor line movement. Give me Marcin Tybura, 1-star confidence.
Well, and this is interesting. Bellator, a guy that went 13-2 in Bellator is unranked. There's no ranking on him.
Yeah, I think that, and then again, that may be the topology things. I can tell you he's almost certainly not ranked in the UFC rankings. The UFC likes you
Right.
to fight at least once in the UFC before
Sure.
they rank you, but yeah.
Yeah. But that was based on Tapology.
Yeah, and that could be just the shuffling. And Tyro Fortune hasn't fought for a while, so it's possible that he hasn't fought for 2 years, and they will kick you out of their Tapology rankings if that's the case. So
Yeah. Okay.
he'll be back
All
in
right.
the rankings after tomorrow, though.
All right. I'm gonna lean Tiberia on that one
Okay,
and not
so you're gonna
heavily.
join me on the Tybura pick.
Yes. Yes. All right. Moving on to Chase Hooper against Lance Gibson Jr. I know Lance Gibson Jr.'s father, of course, from the earlier UFC days, and he spent some time training with Matt Hume, Hume, out there in Seattle. Hume, a legend fighter and coach, produced some amazing fighters. But so this
What's his
fight,
dad's name?
what's that?
What's his dad's name?
Lance Gibson?
Yeah.
Lance Gibbon? Oh yeah. All right. Stop it. I'm trying to focus here. Damn it.
Sorry, Pat.
Anyway, Chase Hooper's a tough guy. He's 8-4 in the UFC, 16-4 overall. Very good on the ground. And look, Lance Gibson's actually pretty good on the ground. His father was good on the ground. You know, that lineage from Matt, excuse me, Matt Hume makes him good on the ground. That's just the way it is. So how do you break this down?
Chase Hooper, you're right. He's tough, sometimes a little tough for his own good. It seems like whenever Chase Hooper fights a guy who's a wrestler, he seems to beat him. Whenever he fights a striker, he gets knocked the F out, usually in the first round. We just saw it with Alexander Hernandez. We saw it with Alex Caceres. Any guy with decent striking is going to beat Chase Hooper, and it doesn't matter if Chase Hooper's a big favorite. So he is a little bit. You got to be careful with him here. Now, Lance Gibson's also a well-rounded guy, and he's probably similar to Chase in that he started out wrestling and has accumulated some striking. But we're looking at the line movement for Hooper on Bet Rivers. He opened up at -245. He's -315. But bettors love Chase Hooper for some reason. They always do this. And I don't think Chase Hooper's ever been an underdog in a UFC fight, Pat. I'm like 99% sure that that's true. But he sure has freaking lost in the UFC. He lost 3 or 4 times. So Chase
Yeah.
Hooper as a favorite is a risky bet and is far from a lock. I mean, I don't know if Lance Gibson has the power to put him out like Alex Caceres and Alex Hernandez did, but I want no part of Chase Hooper here. This is a stay away for me. And you know what? Give me Lance Gibson as an underdog pick because underdogs seem to do well against Hooper. No disrespect to the man, but
It's
yeah.
awesome because I've checked the boxes. You know, I've got the numbers written in as far as odds, but before I write in the numbers on the odds, I put the check in the previous box. Who, when I look at the two of them and the other numbers, I picked Gibson as well. So I like that. We're agreeing on this card. I mean, we're
Look at
not
us.
arguing at all yet.
Look at
This is
us.
pretty interesting. I missed that actually, but so let's move on to Musayev and Bahamondes.
Yeah, 2 great names. This is sounds like a Mortal Kombat fight. Yeah, Ignacio Bahamondes from South America versus Tofik Musayev, and if the names ends in V, they're almost always from Eastern Europe. That is the case. Bahamondes does the spitting shit. He does the spitting shit better than just about anyone, but he's not a one-trick pony. He submitted Jalen Turner on the ground. He He gave Rafael Fiziev a fight, but lost that. Now, that was supposed to be Bahamundez's next step. He was a pretty big favorite against Rafael Fiziev, but the legendary striker, the kind of more veteran, beat him, and so now it's how good is Bahamundez? Well, Bet Rivers says he's minus 335 good, and his line has gone up a little bit, gone down a little bit, and he's right back to minus 335. So Tofik Musayev he's a decent fighter. Like most of those Eastern European guys, he can wrestle and strike. I don't know if I'm a big believer in Bahamundez here. I think that he looks pretty good beating up the Roosevelt Roberts of the world, the lower level guys. I'm not sure he's quite ready for the decent guys. He certainly wasn't ready for a high level guy in Fiziev. I am going to hesitantly pick Bahamundez here, but this is a small bet, and nothing with the line movement or watching tape makes me love Bahamundez to just smash and roll here.
Yeah, and well, so this is what the numbers that stood out to me a little bit, because both have had comparable competition on their way up. Tofik certainly hasn't had an easy road given kind of where he's from. There can be some pretty rough fights along the way just to get to the UFC, if you know what I mean. So Bahamundez is 11-0 in the KO TKO category, and Musayev is 18-1. So he has been finished only once while scoring 18 KO TKOs. In the grappling area, Bahamundez is 2-2. He's batting 500, where Musayev has 1-2 and lost 4 by submission. So you sit there and you think to yourself, if I'm going up against another fellow great wrestler, for instance, I'm going to try and keep it standing where I think he's weaker than me. A lot of wrestlers do this. And ironically, both wrestlers could be great wrestlers and horrible stand-up fighters, and they'll just slug it out, right? Because they think they can get the other guy. What happens between these two is going to, I think, dictate a little bit about, who's going to win the fight. But I actually lean a little bit towards Musayev. Not one I'm certainly betting on, but, I think given the number of KOs he's scored and having a rough road to get there, that I think it's a crapshoot with this. I think they're going to stand up and they're going to bang, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree with you. How do you? It's a very similar story to our previous fight, Pat Miletich, with Chase Hooper, where he's such a dominant wrestler, but he seems to maybe have fallen in love with his hands too much. He's obviously improved, but not so much that he can strike with the Alexander Hernandezes or the Alex Cacereses of the world. Can you talk about that, not only as a fighter, but as a coach? We have a little bit of time. How do you deal with the urge to maybe forget the wrestling that like the back of your hand and try out some new striking tricks in the octagon? How do you kind of walk that line of doing what you do best, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, what my philosophy as a fighter and as a coach was, we're here to win. So whatever it takes, and spreading out the defense and being a versatile fighter and being dangerous everywhere and attacking everywhere, even if, like, when, for instance, Matt Hughes fought Renzo Gracie. Matt Hughes is a wrestler. Well, Matt Hughes went out and looked like he was trying to take Renzo down, but he wasn't even trying. Yeah. He wanted Renzo to think that Matt was trying for takedowns to open up the striking, which Renzo wore out eventually because of the striking, got hurt and got finished, right? So it's understanding the game enough to be dangerous everywhere and spreading out the defense of the opponent. So we're there to win ultimately, and if you're capable and well balanced enough to be able to do that, you should. A lot of these guys are programmed by this. The modern MMA era is go out, be a great striker, be marketable, make a bunch of money, all of that stuff. Listen, you make money as a world champion, and you make money by being versatile and having great defense. Like I always say, great offense wins fight of the night. Great defense wins world titles, right?
Yes.
So, all right, moving on to up next is, well, let me see here. We got Terrence McKinney and Nelson. Is that next on the list?
We do.
Okay. And Nelson has had okay competition on the way up. McKinney better. Guys have similar records, similar all the way, really through all of their statistics for the most part. How do you break this down?
Yeah, and I just want to say real quick, I can see that our chat bubble is filling up, maybe 7 messages in chat. Keep that filling up. We will answer all your questions by a UFC Hall of Famer and a pretty damn good sports bettor. We will answer questions at the end. Keep filling that chat box up, and Lee, please remind me to not sign off until we do that. Terrence McKinney, according to Uncle Pat, I'm not allowed to say that I hate fighters anymore, so I will censor myself. But
You
I
don't
don't know
hate
that there's a
fighters.
single.
You might hate their style or the fact that they've cost you money
Yes,
and that you
yes,
weren't able to go buy a T-bone
yes.
steak.
and a lobster
You know,
tail on the side, yeah, and a nice bottle of wine. Yeah, no, Pat is, yeah, and Pat is. If anyone can tell me that, the UFC Hall of Famer can, and I will listen and respect everything he has to say. So the guy does drive me crazy, though. He is a 1-round fighter, and I don't even know if he's a 1-round fighter. He's kind of more of a half-round fighter. So he is very athletic. He is extremely talented. And this isn't me sitting on the couch giving my breakdown. This is the word from several of his teammates, probably former teammates, former coaches, that he has all the talent in the world and just is a little bit lazy and probably could be a world champion if he had the work ethic, and seems to kind of rest on his amazing athleticism, which good for him. And certainly he does put in some work in the gym. The guy's got several wins in the UFC, but seems to beat the guys that he's massively favored to beat, and he always beats them in the first rounds. Anytime he gets a decent fighter and he can't finish them in the first 2 minutes, he gasses and he loses. We just saw it in his last fight against Chris Duncan. We've seen it against Bonefim. We saw it against Drew Dober. We've seen it, and it used to be, Pat, back in the glory days before people caught up, that you could watch a Terrence McKinney fight, and if he doesn't get a finish in the first 2 minutes, he's looking good. So the line is soaring in his direction, but you're like, I know this McKinney guy. He's got about 3 minutes of a gas tank. So you put a bet on the other fighter, and that was about as close as free money as we ever had in MMA betting. Now the sports books have caught up, where if a Terrence McKinney fight goes into the second round, it don't matter how freaking good he looked in the first round, the other guy's going to be favored, which is fascinating. It took the sports books a while to catch up to that. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the deal with Terrence McKinney. If you're going to bet him, just bet him to win in the first round. That you're getting way better odds, and that's a 99% chance that's what's going to happen. He is not built to go 15 minutes. He's barely built to go 5 minutes. It's going to be 2 or 3 minutes of insane striking, wrestling. He can do it all. He's incredibly talented. He just doesn't have the gas tank. So, okay. Man, I don't know. Nelson is tough. I'm gonna go with Nelson here at plus money. McKinney is about minus 190 on Bet Rivers. Kyle Nelson is plus 150. Give me, I don't know, 1.5 star bet on Kyle Nelson. No disrespect to you, Terrence McKinney. You're certainly I haven't strapped on gloves and gotten the octagon, let alone the UFC. So you're a better man than I, but you have gas tank issues too, and I don't think you'll be able to get a tough guy like Kyle Nelson out of there quickly enough.
Beautiful. All right. Moving on to Mansur Abdul Malik versus Yusri Belgarul. This is both guys undefeated in the UFC. And, when I look at the KO win-loss, they're both have seven finishes that way, by that fashion. And neither one has been finished standing up. I don't know, man. This is... it looks like the odds with the last time I looked pretty tight.
Yep.
Has the money gone either direction on this?
It really hasn't, Pat. This is what we call stale line movement in the industry. On Caesars, open up at minus 140. He goes up, he goes down. Now Abdul Malik is minus 135 on Caesars. So essentially the same thing. This is a very tough fight. You know what? I'm going to lean... Man, this is hard. It's going to be a half-star bet either way, but just for the sake of a pick, give me Belgarui. I've seen some warning signs with Mansur Abdul Malik. He's very similar to a Terrence McKinney in a lot of ways. He looks great, fighting guys he's supposed to beat. When he gets that step up in competition, the lights get a little bit too bright. So I think Belgori is he's going to be my lean here.
I'm leaning that way as well because
Look at us,
of
buddy. Tag team.
a drastic a drastic difference in competition on the way up. Drastic difference. And so I think, a guy with some losses on his record who had a tougher road to get there, in my opinion, he's gotten the stripes. He's got the experience. He's taken his lumps. That's really a lot of times when it comes to a close fight, the guy that's had the easiest road is probably going to fold when shit goes sideways. That's just my thought, and I'm glad that you agree with me on that. Just something that I'm noticing. All right, moving on to Julian Erosa against Larian Douglas. Larian Douglas, what nation is he from again?
I couldn't tell you. You want me to look it up while you're talking?
Brazil? I'm trying to remember now.
I'll look it up. You keep on talking. I'll look it up. Or
I don't know where they come up with the name Larian. Yeah, that's like a name from Tennessee that ended up in Rio de Janeiro. Larian. Good night, Larian.
Cletus or something.
He's 4-1. He's 4-1 in the LFA. Which you got to earn your stripes in the LFA. LFA's got some very
that was good. Funny. Clip that, Lee. That's
anyway. So 4-1 in the LFA. Erosa's 9-8 in the UFC. Obviously had some solid competition. Douglas, okay. Is it because the amount of competition that Erosa has had and the time that he's been in the UFC, are they trying to build Douglas for the, Central and South American viewers,
sure.
Going up, build his name against Erosa because of the experience? What's going on there?
Yeah, this is your classic example of just good matchmaking, and that's kind of, people want to say Hunger Campbell's ruining the UFC. I think he might be ruining the UFC for the fighters' bank accounts, but for the fan, they're continuing to do incredible matchmaking, and it's also a win-win for the UFC. So Julian Erosa has been around for 20 fights. They call him Juicy J. He's a fascinating guy. Can't take a straight punch, or he will get knocked out. But if he doesn't, he's extremely tough. So him getting finished isn't due to a lack of mental toughness or whatever. He's one of the toughest SOBs around. He's never been able to take a shot, even since he was young. Like a straight, solid, on-the-money shot. Like a guy like Justin Gaethje can eat that and keep coming for more breakfast. He just can't. And that's unfortunate because he's a tough mother effer, and he will fight anyone, anytime. And he's been in this position, Pat Militech, where he gets a top prospect, and it's a win-win for the UFC, and here's why. Either urban legend, MMA veteran, Juicy J gets a win, and he gets back to 10-10 in the UFC, 500, fans love it, or we get a new name introduced to casual fans or average fans in Larian Douglas. Larian. So, it's a win-win for them, and Erosa has come through in these spots if he just doesn't get finished, and that's a big if. I'm going to lean Larian Douglas because, as you know, Pat, the older you get, that chin will continue to go, so I worry about that for Juicy J. But maybe a few years ago, Juicy J pulls the upset. I don't see it happening here. Give me Larian Douglas.
I'm leaning a little bit that way myself, my friend. Erosa's been around for a long time, getting long in the tooth, and so, yeah. All right, moving on to, Michael Chiesa.
Chiesa, yeah.
Chiesa. It's Chiesa, correct?
Okay.
All right.
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway. And Nico Price. Nico Price, one of Robbie Lawler's past victims.
Yeah.
There's been many. The list is long. Don't feel bad, Nico Price. But Nico's 8-10 in the UFC, batting less than 500 and against Chiesa. Is this Chiesa's retirement fight? Is this it for him?
I believe so. But fighters will say that 4 or 5. Jose Aldo's retired like 6 times, so I guess you just have to take that with a grain of salt.
But huge numbers on Chiesa right now.
Massive, almost a little bit too massive. Now, keep in mind that we got a guy in Michael Chiesa here that just a fight or two ago, he was on the opposite end of these odds. He hasn't looked great. He's getting older. He's moving in more into the commentating, coaching role, and really only fights maybe once a year, something like that. And so I think this is a ridiculous price. You got two veterans. This could easily be a fight on the MVP card of two guys that got cut from the UFC, but still a little left in the tank, which is essentially what this fight is. Yeah, I mean Nico can bang, and he still has some power. Chiesa has always been more of a grappler, and I think maybe kind of his issue was he didn't he maybe overextended himself. He would always be dominating a guy and then kind of maybe go submission over position, as they say, and get himself in trouble and get himself finished. But yeah, I mean, certainly should roll here and seems to have the game plan to do it. He opens up at minus 550 on Caesars. He moves to minus 850. I've been thinking about this fight for the past few days. I think I'm confident at this point, locking him in. You can put him in that. So your two fighter parlay is now a three fighter parlay of good line movement fighters. He's let me down before, but I think Nico Price is. I think both guys. This could be a retirement fight for them. Give me Michael Chiesa. Throw him in your parlays. Minus
Okay. So
850 on Caesars.
just for shits and giggles, because I look at Chiesa's history, scoring 0 knockouts in his entire fighting career. What are the numbers on Chiesa winning by KO?
That is a very good question. Oh, goodness Christ, Pat. This is plus 1,200. So you 12 times your money. So you turn $10 into $120.
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying there's a chance. Yeah.
All right, I'm going with Chiesa by submission. Moving on to Alexa Grasso and Macy Barber. Macy Barber at 10-2 in the UFC has done really, really well for herself.
She has, Pat, and people like to give her a hard time. I think maybe getting beat by Roxanne Modafferi, who people never really.
Modafferi's so tricky, dude. She's
Yeah,
always been tricky.
she's been so good and such a veteran of the sport. And I think because she was maybe a little bit of a nerd that people
Well,
didn't
she
take
just
her
wasn't
seriously.
she was never like a super athlete or anything,
Yeah,
right? Just very technical, very
correct,
intellectual,
correct.
all of that. And she was a great fighter. She was a great
He
fighter. So,
was. And
yeah,
there's no shame in losing to her, but unfortunately in this case there was. And Macy Barber has always had to kind of come back from that. But I think she's done a fantastic job, Pat. And I think it wouldn't shock me to see her be a future champion still someday. She's very young. Opens up
yeah,
at minus 150 on Caesar. She's minus 190 now. Now we're looking at Alexa Grasso here. This is a former champion, Pat
right.
Miletich. This is
Yeah,
this is no joke here. To see Barber as the favorite and climbing as the favorite kind of surprises me, but numbers usually don't lie. Give me Barber here, but expect a tough, close fight from literally a former champion. I believe the only one to ever take Valentina's belt away from her. Give me fight goes to decision as well. I think you can throw that in your parlays. That's about minus 350.
yeah. I'm rolling with Macy Barber as well. All right, on to the main event. Israel Adesanya versus Joe Pyfer. This is a really I think this is a very interesting main event. Obviously, two great fighters in there, but Pyfer making the climb, taking off a big bite here against Adesanya. This is kind of a do or die fight for Adesanya, really,
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
my humble opinion.
yeah.
And a guy that's 13-6, he's 1-4 in his last 5 fights.
Hmm.
Like, I never would have pictured that he would be in this position. Although, look, every great champion has their slide unless they get out in time, right?
Yeah.
But Pyfer at 6-1 in the UFC, 15-3 overall. Only been finished once standing up, once on the ground. I think he's better on the ground. I think that he could get it done on the ground probably fairly easily against Adesanya, to be honest with you, if he chose to take it there. What are your thoughts here? Given the odds, I don't know where they're at now, but they were fairly close earlier when I
The
looked.
odds are interesting to me, Pat, and they kind of reflect how I was already see in this fight, which is interesting. So Izzy has lost 3 in a row, and he has lost 4 of his past 5. And I don't think he's in danger of getting cut. I think he's kind of like a Tony Ferguson. They would let him stick around for a while because people will watch. But I think he is in danger of losing credibility and having even a remote chance of ever getting a title shot again. He has to get a win here. And the UFC's done him a bit of a favor. I mean, let's look at his losses. Alex Pereira, who I think he's on my Mount Rushmore, is one of the 4 greatest fighters ever in history. So there's no shame in there. Then he comes back and beats Alex Pereira. Only guy to beat Alex Pereira in the UFC. And then the downfall really goes with Sean Strickland, Dricus du Plessis. And he was beating Dricus until he wasn't. And kind of the same with Imavov. He was beating Imavov until Imavov clocked him. It seems like Izzy, who always had a speed advantage, may be losing that a little bit. And listen, his whole life, Izzy has had a massive physical advantage on really anyone that he's faced. He's been faster and he's been longer. And he works his ass off in the gym from everything that I've heard. This isn't a Terrence McKinney situation, but he was just so freaking blessed and also had a good work ethic, blessed with talent, I mean. And so he gets Joe Pyfer, who is no joke, but it's also kind of almost like, what are we doing here? We're taking a guy who just lost a couple fights ago to Jack Hermanson, and we're giving him the great Israel Adesanya. And I think that the books kind of overcorrected with Izzy's recent downfall, and they made Izzy a slight underdog. Well, the sharp bettors fixed that quickly. Izzy has gone from about plus 110 to about minus 150 is roughly what he's at. And I think that's the right move, and that's the move I'm going to be taking too. Give me Izzy here, make it a 2-unit bet. And no offense to Joe Pyfer. Pyfer's awesome. He's only lost once in the UFC. He's like 4-1 or something, 5-1. But he should be nowhere near Izzy's level. And this is a massive bridge, stepping stone, whatever you want to call it, crossroads in both these guys' lives. We're going to be talking next Friday, Pat, and we're going to be saying either Izzy's back or I think Izzy's about done. Or Joe Pyfer's going to be the next big thing in the division, and we'll be in line for a title shot if he can get past Izzy here. I think it's fascinating because it's a crossroads of both guys' lives. Give me Izzy, though.
All right, I'm leaning slightly towards Joe Pyfer.
Tell me why. I know you kind of did, but let's
well, I mean,
that
he's
up
got
again.
momentum. I mean, ultimately, he's 4-1 in his last 5. He's fought tough people along the way. He's scored a good number of knockouts. I think 8 or 9 knockouts. He's been finished only once, as has Adesanya. Adesanya's fought tougher people, yes, that without a doubt. But ultimately, I think Pyfer is the hungry dog coming into this. I think Pyfer is going to come in looking for that chance, man, to beat a legend like Adesanya. I think Adesanya has obviously record-wise 1-4 in his last 5, been on a slide. Maybe the gas is out of the tank. I don't know. So
yeah, and
Go ahead. No, go ahead and comment
I think,
on that.
We're on the same page there. Listen, Pat, I don't have to tell you this. There's no shame in losing to Sean Strickland, Dricus du Plessis, and Imavov or Pereira. Like these are all 5-star top of the food chain guys that he's losing to, but he used to be top of the food chain. And so it's been to see a guy who never lost lose 3 in a row has been shocking. So shout out Hamza Mir. He's been a super fan since day one. I'll grab one of the questions. He says that from his experience, Dan Lambert really takes care of his guys, doesn't charge them a ton of money, and I'm sure Pat can attest to that. He said that he's already bought tickets for the MVP card for $88, and he's excited to be there. So Hamza, you'll have to
$88 for a ticket to get in there. That's very reasonable considering modern day prices. I mean, a UFC ticket. What do those go for nosebleeds these days?
I don't know about nosebleeds, but only time I've gone to a UFC event, I'll probably never go again because it's hard to bet when you're there, and I want to bet it live. But I did go in Minneapolis
Okay.
And I had decent seats. They were probably about $400. So yeah, for
Okay.
decent
Okay.
seats.
And then, so yeah, we'll go back to Dan Lambert and ATT. He also said plus fighters at ATT don't need the UFC Performance Institute because they have everything there. Listen, I'll be honest with you on the Performance Institute. Here's the reality.
Here we go. Okay.
You can go as technical as you want. You can have a multi-million-dollar facility. You can have all the shit you want, the bells and whistles, all of it. We ran the world out of a racquetball court with wrestling mats on the floor and the
Yes, you
wall,
did.
turned it into a battle box. That was our wrestling room. And then we just had, weights. We had old weights. And everybody go, oh, that was back then. This is not. Listen, here's the thing. Real functional fitness on climbing ropes, kettlebells, swinging malls, Indian clubs, being able to do all the body weight stuff and, all the real fitness stuff happens on tree limbs and throwing concrete around. That's how you get
Wrestling
scary.
bears.
That's how you get scared. Yes, 100%. And so you can do, and this isn't disparaging the Performance Institute. It's beautiful. I've never been there, but I've seen a lot of pictures. Awesome. Knock yourself out. But if you want to become great and be a world champion, have an empty refrigerator and go out and fight for it and train with a bunch of badass wrestlers and badass boxers, guys that are hungry as well, and have a good coach or two. And that's how you're going to get to a world title, is not having shit, not having anything in the bank account, and not having anything in the refrigerator, and knocking that. Because here's the thing.
Keep going, brother.
But here's the thing. I'm passionate about this because this is the
love it.
reality. People that have an option generally are not going to be a champion. It's the people that don't have an option in life that are going to be the champion, right?
Yeah.
And when you paint yourself into a corner psychologically and you commit to it on that level, that's the only way you get to a world title. There's a million really talented people that never made it. I've seen them. I've seen them all, right? So that's what I'm talking about. It's the real deal. So anyway, thanks again to our sponsors, Cell Saviors and Diamine.com. Thank you very much. And anybody in the main event, Adesanya versus Pyfer, pick the winner, pick the round, pick the way it ends, and you'll get free Cell Saviors product and Diamine clothing. And by God, make sure that you pick before Saturday at fight time. As long as it's in the chat, we're going to send you free stuff. And why are you so excited?
I'm excited, Pat, because we finally had our first winner. And I want to give him a quick shout out. We may have even had two winners. We'll have to discuss off air how we want to handle this. But shout out to I gotta go with the live one. Okay, shout out to drum roll, please. Matt Meyer said Evloev by 5-round decision.
Okay.
Evloev won by majority decision. I think that's close enough because we did have one draw in there. And then Mark Mueller also said Evloev by 5-round split decision. We will talk off air, and obviously that's all you can figure out if you want to send them both something. But we had for the first time we had two people win. So shout out to both of you guys, Matt Meyer and Mark Mueller. Good job.
Can we give them? We need them to email.
Yes.
Their name, phone number, and their email and their address, so we can send them free product.
That sounds great.
That's what we need.
I will try to get in touch with them, or Lee will. Congratulations, guys.
Great. All right, free Cell Saviors and free Diamine. And make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share. And let's go Hawkeyes. And thanks again to everybody who joined MMA Mobsters this week.
We love you guys.
Good luck and bet responsibly.
Great show, fun show. We'll see you guys next Friday. Thank you. Our audience is growing. We'll see you guys next Friday.